Hey everyone, welcome to the Industry Show. I'm your host Nitin Bajaj, and joining me today is Kunal Chandiramani. Kunal, welcome on the show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Great to have you here.
My pleasure.
Let's start with who is Kunal?
I was dreading this question. Let's see. Kunal is me. I'm someone who's very curious about every single thing, even when it doesn't suit to be curious. Just curious by default. I think that the default setting is curious, and the moment you move the dial any other side, it just comes back. It's just I think that practically defines me. Just super curious about literally everything, and that's practically what my entire journey has been: curiosity to curiosity.
I love it. That's a good North Star to have and keep chasing. So stay that way. Now, I know you've done a few things already, and I typically like to ask people what are they working on right now. But I'm more curious to know what do you do for a living in your own words.
It's funny to think. I think beyond a point we stop doing things for per se a living, but start doing them to live.
Yes.
Just because I love like to think that way, because I think work is needs to be like it's a huge part of our life, and not just because from one perspective, but just because it is our opportunity to really get something out in the world, which is entrepreneurship. Just getting something a tiny bit or a little larger, maybe a 0.01% difference in our community, in the place we live in, the country we live in, adding that to the world. So I feel that, like, per se, that is something to live for. So let's see what I built a couple businesses. I've been extremely fortunate a lot of times. Right place, right time, and as my team points out every single time, right place, right time, and right team. I think that's super important. I think when you look through straight, it's just the founder that comes up, but then it's this whole, like, I think especially say beyond the first 5-10 months, the whole scenario of how much a founder does changes.
True.
But I think so. I think like it's been I built Kstart eCommerce. That was the largest business I built. Originally Kstart, once we exited, we majority of the sets, we kept up the name and turned and made that Kstart Holdings, and the set sold became Kstart eCommerce. It was incredibly fun. We did something very high impact. I think that's what makes me so proud. Done a couple cool things, cool from my perspective, and it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
That's great. Give me a sense of the size and scale of either the impact or the operations, right? So Kstart became pretty decent size. Walk us through some of the numbers.
So we worked with over 100,000 users with Kstart. We worked with pretty big numbers. We worked with some very aspirational sellers, and that was the best part. I think that's what excites me about anything I've built for India, and even in the future with India being such a key, so close to my heart and so close to my brain when I think about building something. Just the size of the opportunity, but I think we talk so much when we talk about India about the size of the opportunity. What we saw at Kstart when we worked with so many people was the size of the aspirations. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur.
There was a fire there. Yes.
Burning very bright. And I think that's exciting. So even though the beauty is when you work with 10 people in India, the word of mouth is absolutely crazy, because it's often, I don't think India's one of the funny things is it's not just word of mouth, it's everyone. It's, I think there's this old saying about neighbors speaking into everyone's houses. So beyond word of mouth, it's neighbors' eyes that help you out sometimes. It's just the viral effect in India is beautiful, especially when you're helping someone do something better. It spreads. It worked well for us, but I think it's been fun. We got some really good numbers, 100,000 users. dToks, the podcast, dToks was another business I built in the mental health sector. That was amazing because we host a podcast under that where I've got to interview people who 5 years back I wouldn't fandom talking to at 19. So it's been crazy.
It's amazing. Tell me the why behind, right? Every story, every journey has a why, and I'm really interested to hear yours.
I, I have a really good answer for that one. The why was finding whys.
Mm-hmm.
It's honestly, if I put down, so my first TED talk was called the 14-year-old's Quest to Question.
Right.
And I think that Quest to Question has literally been the underlying thing through most of my life. Like, I remember it always not being a good thing because Indian schools aren't very able to answer, abled or enabled, or like just have the infrastructure or the want to take up questions and to delve into curiosity. In fact, why specific to India, just generally schools. And so I, for a long time, I was very fortunate at home that curiosity was a good thing. But outside of that, it was always seen as disrupting the environment, as spoiling everyone's speed by asking why do you want to go at that speed. It's absolutely crazy. It's basically the convention comes down to in most school systems, if you're walking towards extinction, the worst thing to do is ask why and waste time and slow everyone down. It's basically you really need to. I think that personal audit is so important, but beyond that, I think everywhere you just need to ask a why. So my why was just asking why.
I love that. It kind of circles back to the curiosity meter, right? So that's really very relevant. Tell me, what's the one big challenge you're facing right now?
So I think just a quick add to the previous question. I just realized a second why would be impact for me. Creating impact, helping people, seeing that smile spread and come back to you. It's heartwarming. I've never felt like it's amazing. And so the one challenge, I don't know. It's funny. I've been trying things together. So I've always multitasked. And I got so used to multitasking that when I started multitasking in more terms and roles, because I don't know, it sounds funny, but being 14, 15, 16, 17 has different kinds of obligations than any other age.
True.
And definitely much more fortunate because you don't have a lot of the obligations that you do have at a much later age. But then you have its own sets. Like, it was funny, I was trying to balance a lot of things. So it's always been that way. And I think often when I talk, it comes out as by now I found a way to deal with handling so many roles at one time and still not losing something. But I think that's still a challenge, and I don't think it won't be just because it is supposed to be a challenge.
Right. True. On the flip side,
yeah,
what's the most exciting opportunity?
The most exciting opportunity. Personally, right?
Could be personal, could be professional. If you look at, there's obviously a lot, especially given your exposure and access to things. But what's the one that is the most exciting for you?
It is funny to narrow it down to one, because especially right now, in all my years in business, and I think this is the first time I've been at a phase where I've taken a step back to really do self-exploration, which I think is a privilege. Most people don't get the opportunity to do it. Forget at 19, but like, it's getting the opportunity to really do that. I think the greatest opportunity, generally, I feel community is an incredibly powerful thing. There's a couple of things I'm looking into on the community angle that we've spoken about, but building really strong communities of like-minded people. We've got to do that with dToks for mental health. We built the dToks' non-profit angle, which worked with over 1,000 interns, which was an incredible number, because for the first time I felt I had a team of 1,000 people. It was a good feeling, but it was also classic Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. Just realizing that there were so many people depending. I think a big challenge and a big opportunity right now is mental health. We've been looking at it with dToks more passively and actively, but more passively now to find something that we really feel we want to go deeper into outside of what we're already doing actively. Mental health and community, these are two things that say off the top of my head I've been obsessed about more than Yeah, more than most things 19-year-olds are obsessed about.
And I think that's very speaking of the environment we are in today.
Yeah.
That's we went from not talking about this at all to starting to accept and address that this is a problem in the community. So I'm glad you and several others are working in this space. It's much needed. Now let's look back in the rearview mirror and talk about two things. One, an experience that did not work out as you had expected, was a failure, was became a lesson. And on the other side, and you may have hinted at this in some of the previous answers, an example of something that blew your own expectations and became a success beyond your imagination.
So I'm going to start with the second one. The thing with the second one is I can think of so many, but just because we're talking about detox, I think it's crazy when you throw enough shots, you throw enough balls, and just to expect one or two to hit. When you throw one or two balls, there's a high chance none of them are gonna hit. But when you throw 20, expecting one to hit, you'll be surprised 4-5 of them really hit the basket. But say went beyond hitting the basket. I don't know how I can build that into this analogy, but hits. Aim for the moon. Sometimes you end up amongst the stars, even better.
True.
But so I'm thinking about this. Detox was amazing that way because the non-profit under Detox, we did it under a very small experiment just to see how we could be of help to a small group of individuals. Turns out we were able to develop a framework that was very scalable. This was completely non-profit funding it just because we realized that I think we all have a responsibility to do something that improves society, improves our community, and then beyond that, it tries to improve mankind as a whole. Even if it's by 1,000%,
Right.
it's still a huge impact. But in this case, we were able to work with young people. People all the way from say grade 11 all the way to say someone pursuing their master's PhD from universities such as the University of Pennsylvania, like really high-end schools, and universities in third world countries which I had never heard of. Like get them together in cohorts of 20-25 people to go take them through a program, train them on psychological first aid. Very simple, non-medical, not very deep but more broad. So they basically, I think we talk a lot about first aid, we talk a lot about knowing CPR too, even like which is but like even beyond that we talk a lot. Everyone knows how to put a bandage, but when we talk about mental health, not too many people know about someone's having a break. You might actually go and, like, especially the way we think, we might just go and end up pushing them beyond the cliff rather than giving them a hand.
True.
So we just train them on basic psychological first aid, so they can just be of help if someone's needs help.
At least recognize it and then provide some basic help, the equivalent of putting a band-aid on someone.
Exactly. I think we have a huge obsession with big, like really big changes. Someone who's like, I think what we forget is it's preventive care. We always focus, if something's -10 right now, we'll wait for it to get -100, -150 before we intervene. But when it's at -10, it's so much easier to intervene, and you can do so many more people. You can grow the impact so much. So that's what we did, aimed at larger people. For the second part of what was the first part of the question again?
Well, the first one was something that did not work out as you'd expected.
That's so many things. I don't know. I want to say school, but that's funny, guys. So I homeschooled for my 11th and 12th just because I realized I was getting awfully bored in school. It was comical. I was realizing, I don't know, I think so many schools still do not allow students to bring a phone or a laptop to school, which is alien to me, just thinking about we're in a world where artificial intelligence is growing at a pace which none of us fathomed.
Right.
And now we're asking people to not get something, to take notes on paper rather than a word processor, and we're expecting to prepare them for the world to come. it's there's a
Super
lot of
scam.
it is. It honestly it is so comical to me just thinking how much schools aim for the future but do not. I don't want to turn this into a rant about schools, but school definitely didn't. I don't think it was the perfect thing for me, so I decided I want to find a mix. I don't want to completely steer away, but because it has its pros, as limited as they are. But it does have its pros. So I wanted to find a way I can develop to educate my own self. I can design so very personal. I don't think I even have the right word, but I can basically decide what I want to teach myself and how I want to teach myself and the why I want to teach myself, what I feel will be of help to me, and then take actions where I can learn that. So that was, I think, a lot of. So I homeschooled to 11th and 12th after feeling that I completely failed out of the school system because it just didn't fit. I didn't per se fail out of it, but I just took a step back because I realized that I felt I was failing to teach me, even if I got a really good grade. It didn't mean I learned what I was supposed to learn. So I felt it failed me on the part, or I failed it at learning anything effective. I was just getting grades. I don't think that made a difference, but like learning.
I think you have the right objective in mind. As long as we are learning, the grades don't really matter. They're just a validation of something. But if you're learning, then that is just a derivative, anyways. So let's transition into my favorite part of the show. We call it the one-line life lessons. Would love for you to share your one-liners with us.
Yeah, be a good human. I think it's underrated by a huge quantum. I think we talk so much about what business is and what business isn't. And what life is, and you need to look for, like, I think the best and the most successful people I've met are really good humans. They really care. They genuinely care for the people who are around them. They care for everyone. So I think a lot of it comes down to just be a good human, care for everyone, and like don't do anything that's bad. It comes down to as simple as that. Like, just be a good human. Like, it's simple. Most times you're like, you can and you can't, and sometimes there are gray areas, but I think most times you can find a way out of the gray areas into something that's more white than black, because everything's not white and black, but you can try for more white than black, and like whenever you can, just be good. uh, I just jumped to the second one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Always try. I think, again, very underrated. I think so many times we're just better off if we try stuff. Like I think we just think to ourselves that it's not gonna work out before we've even given it a shot. Just most times it's worth a try, just because the regret is a very bad thing. It is the only thing I think I tend to steer really away from. This would probably be the third one. Regret is a really bad thing. So just try. Always try. I don't think it's can be overstated how important it is to try things that you're obsessed with. Whether it's like taking a leap of faith sometimes, trying something, trying out a new project, trying out a small idea. Never know how big it grows, but if you don't try, it's just gonna always stay with you. So it's gonna stay, and you could have done it, and that hurts. I've seen so many people always see so much pain when they're talking about that. Oh, maybe I could have made that work, and they're like, So just try. Number 3, number 4, moving to number 5. Okay. Life is not a zero-sum game. This is by far my favorite one. Life is not a zero-sum game. We become so wired as kids to think that there's only this much that we all need to divide amongst ourselves. And it's crazy to think about how little that has to do with reality. Most times it's far from it. We can like synergies and collaborations are so powerful at making 1 plus 1 111. It's absolutely crazy. I think life is never a zero-sum game. It's like unless you're the last people looking for the last bunch of food, I think there's always chances. Even then, you can find a way to farm. life is not a zero sum game. Work, like, you can grow out of it. You can just work towards increasing it. You don't need someone else. And like, I think last would be support others. That is, I think we all expect everyone to support us, but we don't expect to support others the same way, which is sad. I've been so fortunate with so many people who've supported me more than I could ever ask for, who've been there for me more than I would ever expect anyone to be there, and people who had no incentive for themselves to be there. It makes me like, it makes me feel so, it's very important to give, because always support others, and like beyond supporting others, always give. I think that's the best way to phrase it. Always give, help people.
Love it. And thanks for giving your knowledge and experience that you have gained so far. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
My
Kunal, it's been a pleasure.
My
and
pleasure.
I'm sure we'll have you back again as you have more adventures, more experiences, and more exits. But had a wonderful time as always.
Likewise.
Awesome. Thanks.
My pleasure.